It's time for Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen.
What is up, everyone? Trey, Lyle here from Frontstretch.com, filling in for Brian for part of the show today. Gonna have a great show lined up for you a little bit later on. We'll preview the Coca-Cola 600 with Anthony Damoctt, get the Kyle Larson side of that double. But first, we have to get the first half of the double he is attempting this weekend and the biggest spectacle in racing, the Indianapolis 500. Bryan Nolen did sit down with our IndyCar writer, Christopher DeHarde, and previewed the big race in Indianapolis, Indiana this weekend, the Indy 500. So instead of a traditional driver interview for going into the Inferno, we're putting the entire Indianapolis 500 in. So time to go into the Inferno with the Indy 500 preview.
Now it's time for...
As they see the front straight for the very first time, as they come to green, this is the Indianapolis 500 for everybody to see.
To go into the Inferno with Brian.
Right now, folks, at this time, gonna bring into the program, he is our IndyCar expert. We decided to have him on to preview the greatest spectacle of racing at CDE Hardy, HARDE, the one, the only Mr. Christopher DeHarde. Mr. DeHarde, how in the heck are you doing, my friend?
Pretty good. Bonus points for you for pronouncing my last name correctly.
I try my best. I try my best.
Cannot tell you how many times I've heard Christopher DeHarde over the years. If I had a nickel for every time that's happened, I wouldn't need another job, but I digress. Looking forward to the greatest spectacle in racing. Slightly different two-letter word there, just giving you a hard time, Brian. But
fair enough.
Fantastic. This is the first time I've been on a podcast with you in almost 10 years, back in your Blog Talk Radio days.
I know. It's incredible. And boy, we've both changed a little bit, outlets as well as just overall. But the one thing is we both still love racing. And let's dive in. Bigger storyline, Penske and their speed or Kyle Larson?
Where's a coin here? So here's the thing. If you're looking within the IndyCar world, it's Penske, because this is the first time a team has shut out the front. Apparently, the Pacers must have done something pretty good. Pacers are playing the Celtics right now. Bing bong. Anyway, I digress. Within the IndyCar world, Penske's a bigger story because this is the first time that they have swept the front row at Indianapolis since 1988. Actually, the first time any team has swept the front row at Indianapolis since 1988. A lot of teams have done 2 out of 3 spots on the front row, but no one's gotten all 3 cars on the front row since 1988. In terms of overall motorsports in North America, it's obviously going to be Kyle Larson. The Speedway, according to a tweet by Nathan Brown of the Indianapolis Star, the Speedway has about 6,000 tickets left for next Sunday's race. It's looking like it's getting closer and closer to being a sellout, but I don't know if they're going to lift the blackout. For those of you unfamiliar with some of the quirks of the Indianapolis 500, the television broadcast is blacked out in central Indiana until that evening. So a lot of traditions around the house in central Indiana, if you're not going to the race, is you listen to it live on the radio. I wonder if that's why they've won NMPA awards the last several years. I digress. Anyway, the blackout has been lifted a few times over the years. In 2016, it was lifted because for the 100th running, it was a certified sellout. In 2020, it was lifted because there were no fans in the stands. In 2021, there was limited fans in the stands, although you couldn't tell based on the roar after who won the race that year. And in 2022, funny enough, Peacock was actually not blacked out if you were in central Indiana. But in 2023, everything was. Still trying to figure out if the blackout's going to be lifted in 2024. And in my own opinion, it should be blacked out overall, but that's another discussion for another time. Anyway, Larson is a massive story. He qualified 5th. He did a tremendous job doing all of the right things. We know we always say there's two drivers in Indy, two kinds of drivers in Indy, those who haven't hit the wall and those who are going to hit the wall. Wait, those who have hit the wall and those who are going to hit the wall. Sorry. Larson, he hasn't come anywhere close to it. He's actually done a very nice job. No real major situations. And yeah, he's done a very nice job of taking care of business and qualifying really well. He hasn't put a wheel wrong so far that I can tell. And it's been going fantastic for him.
Are you surprised by that, Chris? Are you surprised by everything is going not asked to plan? Maybe probably he would like to be maybe on the front row, but I mean he qualified fifth. I mean that itself for never even stepping into an IndyCar running in a race before. I mean he had test days and everything. I'm sure he had practice leading up to qualifying on Sunday. But I mean, how just what kind of level of surprised are you by this so far?
Not very. Let's turn the clock back to 2017. Fernando Alonso. He competed in the Indy 500 for Michael Andretti's team in a dual effort with McLaren. I believe the team name was McLaren Honda Andretti. He qualified fifth and actually led laps early in the race. And then, well, unfortunately for him, his engine let go. Unfortunately for Larson, during one of his qualifying runs, he had a plenum event, where like something in the plenum combustion chamber like ignited all the fuel in there, and the engine was starved for a second or two. But talented race car drivers are talented race car drivers. They know what they're doing. They can figure it out and get up to speed quickly. However, one thing that Larson has been very honest about is the fact that there's a lot of stuff in an Indy car to learn that you don't have in a stock car. In an Indy car, you have all sorts of different adjustments that you can make to make the car go quick and to help stay on top of how the car changes over the course of a run, whether it's doing your anti-roll bars, stiffening them, softening them, whether it's your front or your rear, adjusting the weight jacker on the car to determine how the right rear of the car sits, also adjusting the fuel mixture as well. There's a lot of tools that Kyle Larson can adjust in the car, and I don't think he's still 100% comfortable with adjusting everything, but he's getting comfortable enough to where he's actually not doing too bad of a job, quite frankly. I think if he has a second year at this and he has a little bit more time to get adjusted to what he can and what he can do with the car, it'll be even better. Um, if you're asking me for a race day prediction for Kyle Larson, I would say around seventh or eighth place. I think that's a good estimate. I think it's going to be a lot different than what he's used to in a stock car. And then there's two races at Indianapolis. There's the Indianapolis 375. You survive the first 150 laps. And then once it's 50 to go, another race is on.
You mentioned something, Christopher DeHarde, our IndyCar reporter joining the program here. You mentioned something that I kind of didn't think of. Doing this again. Could we see him do this again? Could this not just be a one-off for him?
I think it's possible. When we saw Fernando Alonso do it in 2017, he said he would be back, not the next year, but in the, as he called it, the future. He tried in 2019, did not make the race. He went back in 2020 and was basically anonymous the whole race. Um, I see Larson as wanting to do this again. I think that this is an experience that he has been enjoying, I hope. Um, then again, every time I walk by the McLaren garage area, there's always a little crowd, the Larsonites, or I'm not sure what other term you would use here, but it's almost like like Dale Jr. was the Pied Piper at Daytona and Talladega. Well, it's like you see these crowds of people and just like, if he walks out the other door in the suite, y'all are never gonna see him. Um, so in that situation, like I feel bad for him a bit because it's like he has nowhere to go. He has no way of avoiding everything unless he's like inside. Like he can barely walk outside. Um, his, the garage area, the stalls for they are at IMS. But I will say this, he has done a great job of integrating himself in the community. One of the other Frontstretch IndyCar contributors, Tony Donahue, does a lot of video stuff, a lot of social media. He actually put out a tweet now after the fact, but he said, "Nice of Kyle Larson to drive his golf cart on Main Street to go eat dinner." And someone another friend of mine actually said, "Hey, nice job letting everybody know Larson was there." He's like, "That's why I waited till he was gone." So yeah, Larson has been embracing the spirit of the event. It's been fantastic to see him here. I just wish that he had a little bit of just a little bit of space because it's like everybody's just crowding around him so much. I mean, I mentioned the Alonso comparison earlier. It's the same thing except that much more English is spoken than Spanish, to put it bluntly. Um, at least on the bright side, though, this was announced so far in advance that the Speedway knew about everything going on because when Alonso was announced, it was in April of 2017, and the credential deadline, I think, had already closed. But I'm pretty confident that Tim Sullivan, who was the director of credentials for the Speedway at the time, he got a flurry of emails like, "How can we get in? How can we get in?" And they had to accommodate everybody. So, yes.
A couple more things here before we let you go. It feels like it's Penske versus the field, Joseph Newgarden, Will Power, Scotty Mack. Does it feel like that at the racetrack, talking with other media members and then talking to the other drivers?
I would say so. The thing with Penske is that, or one of the things with Penske is that, and this is, the Penske guys are going to deny this, but it's something that we cannot, not bring up. They have a technical alliance with AJ Foyt Racing. Now, AJ Foyt Racing, as you know, they have not won very many races recently. They have an ace in the hole because they have hired one of the best engineers in the last 10 years or 20 years in IndyCar history to work for their team. If I'm setting up an IndyCar team tomorrow, there are two engineers that I'm hiring first before I hire any drivers. The first of those is Craig Hampson. He works for Andretti Autos, Andretti Global. I put another dollar in the swear jar over here. The second person I would hire is Michael Cannon, who works for AJ Foyt Racing. He was with Dale Coyne Racing with Craig in 2017 when Sebastian Bourdais had a run that would have gotten him into the Fast Nine, but he crashed. He was with Chip Ganassi Racing and helped Scott Dixon win the 2020 IndyCar Championship and several races that season. Didn't win the pole that year. He might have won the, I think he did win the pole in 2021, if my memory is correct. Anyway, I digress. Michael Cannon is the AJ Foyt Racing ace in the hole, and he has been able to help Penske with everything with their setups, and that's one of the reasons why they are so quick. Um, I mean, it also kind of helps you have three very talented drivers. Someone mentioned something about a push rod with a suspension, but I don't credit that as being too much of the reason why. Because there's a lot of things you got to get right to qualify for the race. And we saw it on Sunday in the bump day shootout. If you don't have every detail right, you might go home. And you ultimately saw that happen. But yes, I do agree. It is kind of Penske versus the field. At this point, if you ask me to pick a winner, I would probably pick one Penske driver and pick one person from the field because it's hard to go against either.
Last but not least for you, Chris, I was going to mention that if you had to pick someone, who would you be picking? And then maybe like a dark horse, someone that's starting not in the Fast 12, maybe someone further back. Obviously, it's obviously difficult to win. We saw Ryan Hunter-Reay win. Where was it? 17th, 16th, or something?
I think it was
Somewhere
18th.
18th. Okay.
Let me actually get the starting grid right here, and I can tell you. So if you were to ask me to pick, I'm going to make three picks here. So
Okay.
I mentioned a Penske driver, Will Power. He started second when he won the race in 2018. He has finished second in every race this year except for Long Beach. This might be the race where he actually gets the win there. If you were to ask me to pick a driver outside of Team Penske, I'm going to stick with another driver in the top 12. I actually really like Felix Rosenqvist. He's starting ninth for Meyershank Racing in the number 60 car. Rosenqvist is a very, very quiet individual. I like him a lot with this team. He's gotten a couple of front row starts this year, and I think he actually has a really good shot at this. Now, if you were going to ask me to pick a driver outside of the top four rows, Mm. I'm looking through the field. Ugh. I would love to say Connor Daly. He's starting 29th, but Connor is a poster child for bad luck at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Um, this is really, really difficult. Because Elio, I love Elio, but he's 49, so that is a tick against him, but he
Yeah.
races like he's 20. Scott Dixon starts 21st, but Chip Ganassi Racing has not had the overall outright speed this month. In fact, Chip Ganassi's best car in the field is Alex Palou in 14th. Um, you know what? I'm just gonna put the car right outside the top 12. I'm gonna say Colton Herta.
Good
Um,
pick. That's a good
he
pick.
had he had a great car uh in the post qualifying practice that was on Monday. He's got a nice little swagger going to him, and I'm gonna pick him as my outside the top 12 pick. So you've got Willpower, Rosenquist, and Herta as my three that will somewhat satisfy your picks, I guess.
I love it. I love it. Once again, at CDE Hardy. Once again, Christopher DeHarde joining the program. Last but not least, Chris, what kind of content are you going to be cooking up on frontstretch.com? And then what are going to be some of the content we're going to be seeing this weekend?
So, upon further review, I can save you a little bit of time. See DeHarde.
Oh, okay.
I have a idea for a column called Upon Further Review. I'm gonna try to get it on there for Friday. I'm gonna try to do some video stuff. For race day, I have something else I've got going on. Uh, but we do have Michael Massey and Alex Gintz that will be at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, flying the flag for Frontstretch. Another outlet has requested that I help them out with something, and our wonderful, wonderful boss Tom Bowles has said yes to it. But I will be letting Alex and Michael know what's going on. They have if anything you know anything, they know where to find me. I'm right next to Robin Miller Spot in the media center, so I got great company.
I love it. Alex and Massey are going to be having all the content for frontstretch.com at CD Hardy on the Twitter X, whatever you want to call it. Chris, thank you so much. We're going to be checking out all of your content on the social medias. And once again, have a great time at the Indy 500, my friend.
Thank you very much. And for anyone listening to this that is looking at going to the race for the first time, if you go to YouTube and search up a complete Indy 500 first time guide, you're going to find a video that some idiot made. Go take a go take a watch to it. It'll help you out with a couple of things. Just remember on race day, there's no such thing as getting to the speedway too early. In fact, I'm going to be getting there before 5 a.m.
Ooh. Oh boy, that hurts me. But hey, whatever, however you have to get there, he will be there. Once again, Christopher DeHarde joining the program.
I want to thank Christopher DeHarde for doing that with Brian. Brian shares his appreciation. But now let's move on to our next segment. What's still hot?
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
What's still hot? Bringing into the program the man who was at North Wilkesboro this past weekend, Anthony Damoctt, here with us. And Anthony, first, happy to have you on, but you were there for the fight. We're gonna, I think, react more to the details of the fight with our soundbite of the week, but do want to get your reaction. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. fined $75,000. Couple crew members suspended for I believe, 1 for 6 and 1 for 8. Team mechanic Clint Matrix suspended for the next 8 races, and then Keith Matthews actually was suspended for the next 4. And then Ricky's father, Ricky Stenhouse Sr., who was seen going after Kyle Busch, suspended indefinitely. Do you? There's this growing sentiment about NASCAR's going to use this in basically every promotion. You'll see this in the All-Star promotion next year. Do you think it's a fair punishment, or are you in the camp of if you're going to promote it, don't fine them?
Yes and no. I mean, it's really weird because the All-Star race is an exhibition race. So it's a little bit, for me, it's a little bit hard to assess penalties for something that really doesn't even matter. Should there have been penalties? Yes. Should they have been that stiff? I'm not too sure. I think NASCAR does want to set the precedent of like, there is a code of conduct and we need to stick to that. But I think for an exhibition race that, $75,000 is pretty high. I think that's one of the highest, if not the highest, monetary fines we've seen for a fight. So, but I am also in the camp of like, why are we gonna penalize these drivers when we're just gonna use them in promotions? Now, that's not necessarily of NASCAR's control itself. That's more on, the TV crews and the tracks who are going to use that stuff as promotional material. But there is, NASCAR itself, its social media was flooded with videos of the fight throughout the night and then the day after, obviously. And I think North Wilkesboro made a shirt that said, "I suck just as bad as you. Let's go." So, I am in the camp of why fine the drivers, why punish the people if we're gonna promote it. But at the same time, I'm like, we need to make sure that the next time this happens, because it's gonna happen again, maybe not between those two, but we need to make sure the next time it happens, it doesn't devolve into like what we saw at Phoenix in 2012, and where we have an all-out brawl between two pit crews and then some, or like Texas 2014, where everybody and their mother was getting involved in it. I think there's some sort of, the fine is there to basically say, we don't want you to do this. This doesn't need to be a recurring thing, but also at the same time, just let them fight it out. These guys will forget about it next week. It's almost like hockey. I mean, we always compare hockey in situations like this. Just let them fight it out, because guess what? They're going to forget about it the next week. I guarantee you, if Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse fought it out in full this week without other people getting involved, I think it would have been water under the bridge come next week. And then we would be looking at people like Stenhouse's father getting suspended, which I do agree with. Like, it was the same precedent that when Nick Sanchez's father got suspended for the rest of the season last year after the incident with Matt Crafton. The precedent was set there. Like, you don't need to be involved in your son's battles. I think he can handle it himself. But for the most part, I think the penalties are a little too stiff for A, an exhibition race, and for B, using promotional material in the weeks and years to come.
Yeah, I'm with the average. Let's do a hockey fight. Let no one else get involved. Let, Kyle and Ricky settle it, and then it's kind of over with. But that's where I said, all right, big announcement this week. The class of 2025 was announced. The top two vote getters in the modern era ballot were Carl Edwards and Ricky Rudd. And then Ralph Moody was elected to the Pioneer ballot. And then the Landmark Award for Outstanding Contributions to NASCAR went to Dr. Dean Sicking. And if you don't know who that is, he is a big part of the development of the safer barrier, which you could argue is maybe the best invention to happen to the sport itself. So overall, what did you think of the class? Do you feel like someone else should have gotten over one of them? But overall, what were your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to start with the Landmark Award, because I absolutely agree that Dr. Sicking should have gotten. I think he should have a spot in the Hall of Fame itself. I mean, because of him, we have so many drivers who may not be around today if it weren't for the safer barrier. So, I think he is more than deserving of that award. It's well deserved. Because of him, we are, we think of crashes more as minor inconveniences than life or death situations, and to think of it that way in any aspect is rather awesome to think about. That way, we don't have to worry about if our favorite driver is going to walk away or something like that. We know that 9.9 times out of 10, the worst that's going to happen is maybe a minor injury, sit him out a few weeks, he'll get back in the car. So absolutely deserving on that front. As for the three who are actually going in the Hall of Fame, Ralph Moody is a good choice for the Pioneer. I personally was thinking that maybe it'd be Banjo Matthews, but I think Ralph Moody is an excellent choice. I think his contributions to the sport in its early years, I'm actually surprised he hadn't been in sooner. And I could say the same about Ricky Rudd, honestly. I think Ricky Rudd was as tough as they come. He is one of the toughest competitors out there. I mean, he has been able to walk away and return to the car after terrifying crashes. I think back to his flip at Daytona where he taped his swollen eyes open just to compete in the next week. So I think his was long overdue too. Obviously, the big story is Carl Edwards. There's a bunch of discussion on social media. Should he have gotten in? There's a lot of people like to say Hall of Fame versus Hall of Very Good, and I don't know. I would have picked Harry Gant. I think Harry Gant is one of the people who, much like Ricky Rudd, but actually even more, has been largely overlooked for Hall of Fame spots. I mean, he did remarkable things he did things in his 40s that people in their 20s today are doing. Like, he didn't get his start in NASCAR until his late 30s, and retired when he was in his 50s, and was able to win and compete for championships. So I would have picked Harry Gant over Carl, but I mean, we all know how much of a fan favorite Carl Edwards is. He, his classic backflip off the race car when he wins, that's one of the most unique celebrations in NASCAR. No one else has, well, I would say no one else has done it, but Daniel Hemrick did it when he won the championship off the top of his car. But it's a celebration unlike no other, and we all knew when Carl would win a race that it was going to be a fun celebration. I don't necessarily agree with putting him in, at least yet, because he does have a Busch title. He does have a Busch Series title. He is worthy of some consideration for the Hall of Fame. I just don't think right now, being a first ballot Hall of Famer, I don't know if that was the right choice with some people on there, especially, like I said, with people like Harry Gant on there. Now have to wait another year, for even the chance to be on the ballot.
Yeah, we had a great discussion about this on Happy Hour with Mark Garrow, PRN, and Davey Siegel. Also get their perspectives of the fight. Anthony was there, but Davey was on the ground. So check that out. But they offered some great perspectives. It is interesting because I think because I'm younger, I have an affinity towards Carl Edwards. And it's like, yeah, he's a Hall of Fame guy, 20-plus wins, which is, I think, a really good benchmark. And then you have the championships in the Xfinity and Truck Series where you look at, and his career, he ended early, and I mean, he probably should have had a championship he was arguably closer than any human being ever to winning at least one title. I mean, he technically tied for a title. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to see. All right, let's dive into our soundbite of the week, and let's get the we'll call it the prequel to the fight from Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm gonna bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And short track racing.
It's time for the sound bites of the week.
Well, we all saw what happened, but take us through the initial contact that you had with Kyle, and then
we got a really good start. He left the door wide open, went through the middle, almost had him clear the 34, kind of ran up the track, and we all just kind of touched there, nothing major. And then Kyle tried to wreck me in 3 and 4, and then finally did wreck me there in 1 and 2. But our car was really fast. I felt really good. We were good yesterday, and bummed that we had already passed 2 or 3 cars there. So bummed that we couldn't see it to the end.
What'd you say to his crew?
I told Randall that first I parked it there because I figured Kyle would do something similar, and then just told Randall that he could tell Kyle I'll see him afterwards over the radio, since there's no tunnel here. I can't leave, so I'll be here when the race is over.
I will be here because I can't move. Because there was no tunnel. Some legendary quotes out of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He said to TV, like, maybe Richard can hold my watch. I mean, ultimately, let's take a different angle to the fight itself. Everyone's seen the video. If Kyle Busch saw a replay we'll say like you were there, like what, 2 minutes tops between him getting out of the car and him getting to Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Yep.
Do you think a fight happens?
I don't. I really don't. I've told people since, obviously, as mentioned, I was also part of the media scrum that was there. I've told people that I expected, when that whole thing happened, I expected them to have a conversation and leave it at that, or Ricky was going to come out swinging. I didn't think there was going to be the in-between that we saw. I think he was kind of like the rest of us and said, if Kyle had seen a replay, and I think he said this on, I believe it was Stacking Pennies, where he said, had he said that, had he seen a replay and told me that, that was, I hit the wall myself and I basically crashed you intentionally for no reason, there wouldn't have been a fight. And I agree. I really think Kyle needed to see a replay because I think when he got out of his car, because I followed him from the moment he got out of his car to the moment that he walked to his trailer and the fight was over. He got out of his car, got his hat. I believe he got his sunglasses for a second, and he was like, wait a minute, I don't need these. And he got a water bottle from his PR guy, and immediately he started walking to his trailer. He knew, it's almost like he knew what was going to happen. But I think had he seen a replay, I think there would have been a little bit more. It may have still been an agree to disagree discussion, but I feel like there would have been more of an understanding of where both points of view were coming from, where Ricky was like, I never touched you, and Kyle was like, well, I still hit the wall and I was frustrated. So, I think he needed to see a replay. That would have I think de-escalated things a lot easier than what we saw.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. Hat tip to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Like that was great. I mean, that was the first time the guy called his shot, did it. Shout out to North Wilkesboro for not having a gate. If you want a really good perspective on the fight, Anthony's video, check it out, frontstretch.com, this YouTube channel right here, at Anthony Damoctt. If you want boxing tips and about a guy who got laid out by almost, his head was like 3 inches from getting decapitated by a truck bed, check out Davey Siegel. And Mark Garrow gave actual boxing tips. I'm not kidding. Check out Happy Hour. Mark Garrow, PRN, a very familiar voice to race fans, mentions his dad was a prize fighter, so he gave plenty of boxing tips. I definitely check that out. Again, I'm plugging Happy Hour, but I'm also plugging my guy Anthony here. He did a great job this weekend. Getting definitely a fight, like a really, at least there was 2 clean punches thrown, one by Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and one that made contact with Ricky Stenhouse Sr.'s face from Kyle Busch. That was the 2 clean punches. There was like a DDT in there. The best you're a Panthers fan, so I think you'll appreciate this joke. The best blocking we saw in the state of North Carolina, I think, with a guy trying yelling, "Don't get on this." I mean, that was better than anything the Panthers did all year last year.
Dude,
so
the Panthers need to sign him immediately. We could use him.
I mean, I've said that a couple times this week. I was like, that's the best blocking we've seen in the Charlotte area in quite some time. All right, let's get to the checkered flag and wrap this show up.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Final thoughts, anything you want to rant, rave, or review about. We're going to do this a little different. We got the Indy 500 preview at the start. Let's do a Coke 600 preview to wrap up this show. We got Larson's side of the Indianapolis 500. Anthony, how do you think how well do you think he'll do in the Coca-Cola 600? Considering he might not be able to practice or qualify the car at all.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Larson is, I believe Tony Stewart called him a plug-and-play driver, and we saw that at the All-Star race. He got in with 0 laps on the car, 0 laps on the option tire, went out and finished 4th. And there was a point in time in the final stage where it looked like he could win the thing. So I think, mile and a half for Kyle Larson's wheelhouse. I mean, he won at Kansas by, that much, if that. So, I mean, it was minuscule the way he won at Kansas, but he still put himself in a position to win there. He was one of the more dominant cars of the night there, and we know what he can do on mile and a halves outside of that. Practice will be, no practice in qualifying would be a little bit of a disadvantage, but it's also the longest race of the year. He's got 400 laps to figure it out. He's got 4 stages. He, even last year, he, I believe it was last year, he was at lap 200. He was like, guys, I suck. I'm sorry. And Cliff Daniels was like, at lap 200, we're going to turn it around. We're not going to have any of that. It's going to be a whole new race for us. And he went out and did his thing and had a pretty good night after that. So I told Chase Folsom, who was at North Wilkesboro with me in our post-race conversations. You can also check that out on our YouTube page. I told him, I was like, realistically, he could sweep. I could absolutely see him sweep.
I feel the same way. It's like to describe it, I've described this a couple of times. There are like 2 parts of my brain right now with Kyle Larson. It's like, I think he could sweep it. And then like the realistic point of view is like, no, that makes no sense. He's like, this is his first Indy 500. Like, they're professionals. And then like the other realistic part of my brain is like, but it's Kyle Larson. It's kind of like, it's like, Usain Bolt has like one leg and is racing someone. It's like, but it's still Usain Bolt, like that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it was, I think I wouldn't have had that opinion if it weren't for the fact that he went out and smoked 29 other guys, and he's going to start 5th in the 500. Now, there will be things during the race where he doesn't know, there are things that he's going to have to learn on race day. But, like, if he can go out and qualify in 5th, who knows what he can do during the race, and we know what he can do on mile and a half. So, realistically, he could sweep, and I would not be surprised in the slightest. And I think the historical moment that would be when even when he just takes the checkered flag in the Coke 600, if he can complete all 1,100 miles. Remember the last time when Kurt Busch did it, he blew an engine late in the Coke 600, so he didn't even get to 1,100 miles. So just to see him get to 1,100 miles will be, that I have full faith that he can do that. I would not be shocked if he won both races, and I feel like if there's anybody in the Cup Series field right now who could do the double and realistically win, it's Kyle Larson.
Yeah, I actually think there are like 2 humans on this planet Earth that could do the double and win both. And it's Kyle Larson and Scott McLaughlin, because they have kind of the perfect balance of Scott's a little different because it's VA supercars and he might need a little bit more time but you would assume he'd be in a Penske car. So like they would be good. Penske won the 600 last year. I mean, they swept the day or the 2 days because the Coke 600 was on Monday. But I just want to leave with this final thought, and I'll let you have one more about the double or if this weekend in general. If you're a race fan, first watch both. I'm assuming most people will, but enjoy this moment because it's not like this is happening often. Like something I've talked about a lot when I, do my sports radio show or do this. It's like there is this element of embracing greatness or like while it's going on that doesn't happen today. Like you see it, like I think like LeBron is a really good example of that. Like the conjecture about LeBron is not the fact that he's in his 21st season and is the all-time leading scorer and 40,000 points. It's like he can't win another title as compared to Michael Jordan. Like it's more about the action itself. So embrace this moment in terms of like, this is, truly a guy saying, I am the best wheelman on the planet and I'm going to prove it. And I think that's awesome because I think the fact he qualified 5th and the fact that the clear 3 best cars and an Indy 500 champion who won the 100th Indianapolis 500 in his first attempt is the 4 cars ahead of him, and then you have 2 Indy 500 champions in Penske, and then obviously Scotty Mack is on the pole. Like, he's 5th. He outqualified Scott Dixon, who's maybe the greatest IndyCar has ever seen. He outqualified. He's done better. Like Colton Herta, insert Alex Palou, who might be the most talented guy in that series right now. And I know it's different in Indianapolis 500 qualifying, but he's the best wheelman on the planet, and he's going to go prove it on Sunday. And that's awesome. That's just awesome. And that's kind of how I'm going to enjoy it. I may or may not put a parlay on him to sweep just because I think it would be good to have my life. But I'm Anthony, any final words on this weekend? Maybe something you saw from the All-Star race. Floor's yours, real quick.
Listen, I'll make this as quick as I can, but I want to give a shout out, and I want anyone who's watching this who goes to a future race, thank all the people who work at a track on race weekend, because we all saw what happened on Saturday at North Wilkesboro, where we had Lake Wilkesboro in turn 1. The parking lots were completely muddy. I mean, it was hell on earth on Saturday afternoon trying to get out of the speedway, getting that track ready for Sunday, and all the people in Wilkes County who came together to make sure that not only could you park in grass, in mud, they brought in tons of gravel to make sure that you could actually have some sort of grip on the hills, but they also made sure the track was dry, ready to go for Sundays, all of Sunday's activities. And, there was, I think it was don't quote me on this, but I think there was a community college up the road who opened up their parking lots and gave free shuttles to people who were supposed to park in lots that were deemed too torn up to park in. So everyone who came together to make sure that we could go racing on Sunday deserves an extra special thank you, because without them, that wouldn't have been possible. So I encourage anybody who goes to the track, whether it's Indy or Charlotte, even your local dirt track, be sure to thank a track worker, because they have worked their tails off to make sure that we can enjoy the racing that we see week in and week out.
Anthony Damoctt just killing it like he always does. What great way to end. I loved it, man. That's seeing, like, it was my brother's graduation on Saturday, so I wasn't paying attention to the truck race. And just seeing the photos and the videos on Twitter of the flood is insane. So at Anthony Damoctt, I believe you are riding fire on Fridays this week, because Mr. Massey will be in Indianapolis covering the Indianapolis 500. He is repping a team that is eliminated from the Stanley Cup in the Vegas Golden Knights. But as you can see on this video, sun's out, guns out for Anthony Damoctt. And buddy, I appreciate you joining me this week for Bringing the Heat.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of fun coming on Bringing the Heat with y'all. And real quick, speaking of sun's out, guns out, absolutely sun's out. You can tell I'm completely sunburned from Mother Nature rewarding us from the rain by cooking us on Sunday afternoon.
The racing coverage farmer's tan provided by Anthony
Yes,
Damoctt.
sir.
You can follow me at Trey Lyle VT. Check out Happy Hour. I honestly think, with Mark Arrow and Davey, given that perspective on the fight, it was one of the best episodes we've ever done. So check that out. Also check this out. Subscribe wherever you get the podcast. Like this video on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Brian will be back, hopefully hosting the entire show, not just the first half of it, this next week. And we'll have reaction to Kyle Larson doing the double. We'll have reaction to the Coke 600 and much more. Maybe another fight breaks out. Who knows? Last year, the most popular driver got suspended after this race. So who knows what's going to happen at the Coca-Cola 600. But that will do it for this episode of Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen.
Steven Stump of Frontstretch.com here. Come back for more great racing videos. And if you like us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.